Tashdile everyone, I'm Sakina Butt and welcome to Tibet This Week, a weekly feature in English that tells you about this week's news on Tibet, His Holiness the Dalai Lama and Central Tibetan Administration. Let's look at the headlines first. His Holiness the Dalai Lama successfully concludes engagements in Mungod and being engagements in Balakopi Tibetan settlement. Office of His Holiness the Dalai Lama launches Dalai Lama app. Congressman Jim McGovern calls on China to affirm the right of the 14th Dalai Lama to return to his homeland. Tibet holds the key to changing China. CTA President at ML Sondhi Memorial Lecture in Delhi. India should give up its romantic foreign policy on China. BJP National General Secretary Ram Madhav in New Delhi. CTA President congratulates Rahul Gandhi, new president of Indian National Congress Party and BJP for winning the state election in Himachal Pradesh. On Monday last week, His Holiness the Dalai Lama arrived in Mungod to a warm welcome extended by thousands of Tibetans. His Holiness said that the purpose of his visit to the monastic institute in South India is informed by the fact that the Tibetan Buddhism that originated from the Nalanda tradition makes an understanding of the workings of the mind and emotions, logic and philosophy. This tradition that has been preserved primarily at Sera, Dripung, Gande and to some extent in Tashi Lumpo Monastery. Addressing the huge gathering of devotees in Duguling Tibetan settlement, His Holiness reminded them that the exiled Tibetans are mere refugees and have been forcibly displaced, and Tibetans back in Tibet are subjected to repression of their culture and religion. But yet, we have rebuilt and preserved Tibetan religion, culture and language in exile. His Holiness briefly explained about evolution of democracy in Tibetan politics and said, "Although I have been devolved my political authority, I have not abandoned my duty as a Tibetan and will continue to contribute towards the well-being of the 6 million Tibetans." On Friday last week, His Holiness also inaugurated a new debating courtyard of Jangjuk Chuling Nunnery and gave an audience to more than 400 recently arrived Tibetans from Tibet. His Holiness said that the nunnery is one of the oldest and has been one of the best in India. Speaking to the nuns, His Holiness said, "I have requested nuns to study Buddhism text rather than just going through the rituals and prayers alone. Last year, we saw the conferment of Geshe-ma decree on a group of nuns. These are clearly the result of your hard work." His Holiness shared that at the age of 82, he continues to read and study Buddhist texts with same determination. Age doesn't matter. Once you start to train your mind, you will be happier and more peaceful. Scientifically, it has been proved these days. On Tuesday this week, His Holiness the Dalai Lama arrived at Balakopi Tibetan settlement to a rousing welcome. His Holiness expressed his happiness to be at one of the greatest monastic institute of Sera Monastery. Speaking to the members of the monastery, His Holiness emphasized the growing interest of Indians in the Tibetan Buddhist philosophy, especially the Nalanda tradition. On Thursday last week, the Office of His Holiness the Dalai Lama launched the new Dalai Lama app. With the Dalai Lama app, devotees and followers can watch live videos of His Holiness's teachings and stay up to date with his travels and latest engagements. It was reported in news that the app is not available for download in China's Apple stores. On Thursday last week, US Congressman Jim McGovern, a senior House Democrat and co-chair of the bipartisan Tom Lantos Human Rights Commission, called on China to affirm the right of the 14th Dalai Lama to return to his homeland, whether to visit or to stay. Speaking on the Dalai Lama and Tibet during a special order period in the House of Representatives, Representative McGovern said,
"Today, I call on China to follow a different path, I call on the Chinese authorities to affirm the right of the 14th Dalai Lama to return to his homeland, whether to visit or to stay. I call on them to welcome him home, afford him the respect he deserves as a man of peace, and sit down with him to resolve Tibetan grievances so as to prevent the deepening of tensions and eruption of conflict.
On Thursday last week, President of Central Tibetan Administration, Dr. Lobsang Singye, delivered the third Professor M.L. Sondhi Memorial Lecture at India International Center in New Delhi. Dr. Singye spoke on the theme, Tibet Holds the Key to Beijing, which was the topic of an article written by Professor M.L. Sondhi in 1992 for The Telegraph. In his speech, Dr. Singye reiterated about China's new era declared by President Xi Jinping and how the world order will be affected by China's transformation and the significance of Tibet as a key to understanding a rising China. He recalled Professor Sondhi's recommendation about declaring Tibet as a zone of peace that will act as a buffer between India and China. For decades, the late Professor M.L. Sondhi has said that the least India could do is to declare Tibet as a zone of peace and a buffer zone. However, no one spoke and no one came out in support of Professor M.L. Sondhi. Dr. Singye also spoke about the destruction of Tibet's fragile environment and compared China's Belt and Road Initiative with the occupation of Tibet. The chief guest at the lecture, Ram Madhav, National General Secretary of BJP, said that
somehow we have a problem that we have never bothered to understand our neighbor properly. We are a romantic nation, and our foreign policy is also driven largely by romantic ideas. Since I'm a member of the ruling party, I cannot say much about it, but I am a firm believer that romanticism should end. It has to be a pragmatic policy. Talking about pragmatic policy, that brings me to the question of Tibet.
Ram Madhav further said, I believe the path chosen by His Holiness the Dalai Lama of engaging with Chinese leadership to have meaningful, beneficial and acceptable settlement relationship for the future of Tibet with China is the best available option today. We have great respect for Tibetans living in exile. Government of India is extending all support for Tibetans, although at the moment it is between the Central Tibetan Administration and China. When it is required, Indian nation will stand up for Tibet.
Lobsang will agree with this.
On Saturday last week, President of the Central Tibetan Administration, Dr. Lobsang Singye, congratulated Shri Rahul Gandhi, who was appointed the 49th President of the Indian National Congress Party. We urge you to continue your focus on the Tibet issue and the Tibetan people who share a deep connection with your family since the time of late Pandit Jawaharlal Nehru. We hope that you will live up to the expectations of the Tibetan people and raise the Tibet issue not just in the Indian Parliament but also on the international stage for a swift resolution to the Tibet issue, Dr. Singye said. On Monday this week, Dr. Singye congratulated Bharatiya Janata Party for its massive victory in the Himachal Pradesh state election. The Tibetan people welcome BJP's victory with fond memories and hopeful optimism. BJP at both the centre and state have been very supportive of the Tibet issue and have always extended timely assistance for the welfare of the Tibetan people residing in the state. So much for this week. See you next time. Have a great weekend.